Hi, I'm Georgina Collins, a freelance translator working with Bakwa in Cameroon and the University of Bristol in the UK. Today I'm interviewing two contributors to a brand new bilingual anthology of short stories which has been published by Bakwa, and it's called Your Feet Will Lead You Where Your Heart Is, and on this side, Le crépuscule des âmes, sœurs. So we're going to be conducting the interview in both French and English, and we're going to start with introductions. So first of all, Monique, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I am Monique Kwachou. I am a writer and gender scholar, education and gender actually. I just completed a PhD in development studies with a specialization in higher education and women's empowerment.
Moi, c'est Josépha Bamba. Je suis traductrice de profession. J'ai fait des études en linguistique. Nous avons étudié le français, l'anglais et l'allemand à l'université de Caen. Après ça, je suis allée à l'université de Boya où j'ai fait traduction à l'ASTI. C'est l'école supérieure des traducteurs et interprètes. Oui. Pendant 2 ans, nous avons terminé en 2018. Et donc, la traduction littéraire, la première expérience que j'ai eue, c'est avec Bakwa. Avant ça, je n'avais pas d'expérience en littérature, en traduction littéraire ou même en écriture. Mais je m'intéresse beaucoup à la littérature, les livres, tout ce qui est lecture. C'est mon passe-temps favori. Donc, ça, c'est ma présentation brève.
Merci. So Monique, over to you. You submitted a story to Your Feet Will Lead You Where Your Heart Is. Can you tell me about your story?
My story is Lifesavers. It's called Lifesavers in English at least. And it's a story of a child that returns home from the US to a completely different life and doesn't have an easy time adjusting because there's been a lot of change in her family from the passing on of her parents from HIV. And she's recollecting how much has changed and depressed about it. She considers taking her own life. She actually attempts to take her own life. And in the process of that, one of her distant cousins in the house stops her, realizes what is happening, and tries to bring her out of depression, not in the typical way, not any therapy, not taking it as depression, but rather in a kind of hard knock life way. Like, look at the other people that are less privileged than you. So I wanted to show how we react to depression in our society, more or less not taking it as depression, but more or less taking it as just another problem you should toughen up to address. Given the message I want to pass, it's most important that it should come from the girl's voice and who she was before and who she was after that talking to, after seeing from different people's perspectives, or after being told to look around her and see, like, kind of smell the coffee, I guess, how she compared herself, irrespective of what she was going through, or reduced her feelings to say, okay, at least I am better than that person. It's not as bad as this person, and this person is surviving, so I have no excuse. So I wanted to show how when we are seeing through that lens, our perspective changes. So that did affect the style of my writing because I pretty much couldn't tell Anne's side of the story, the older cousin's side of the story, or her own life. I just had to tell the younger girl's side, what she saw, how she felt, Elizabeth. So
I was going to say, so it's hugely complex on many different levels, and that's a lot for a translator to try and understand and to then re-express in a different language. So let's turn to Josépha now. Josépha, comment as-tu abordé la traduction? En effet, tu as fait la traduction avec Ray Ndebe. Alors, comment avez-vous tous les deux abordé la traduction?
Nous avons commencé par la lecture du test. Quand nous étions encore à Yaoundé pendant l'atelier, nous avons pris une demi-journée pour lire et essayer de comprendre l'œuvre ensemble. Après, je suis rentrée à Boya, oui, et restée à Yaoundé. Nous avons décidé chacun de traduire toute l'histoire, chacun devait traduire de son côté. Nous sommes retrouvés à Boya au mois de novembre pour essayer de voir comment mettre ensemble notre traduction. Parce qu'il était question que chacun exprime ce qu'il ressent, chacun exprime comment il ressent l'œuvre. Oui. Mais nous étions surpris de connaître, de savoir que nous avons compris l'œuvre de la même manière. C'est juste peut-être les phrases, les formules qui étaient différentes, mais on était d'accord au niveau de la compréhension. On était d'accord au niveau même de la formulation de certaines phrases, nous étions d'accord. Donc, nous sommes retrouvés à Boya, nous avons travaillé pendant 2 jours pour mettre sur pied une traduction en commun, une traduction que nous avons proposé à Edwige. Edwige a relu, oui, elle a relu la traduction que nous avons proposée et elle a fait des propositions et des remarques sur les points à modifier, les points où elle ne comprenait pas. Oui, c'est comme ça. Quand nous sommes séparés, nous avons continué à échanger via Skype.
Est-ce qu'il y avait un problème de traduction qui était très difficile à surmonter pendant le processus?
Nous avons eu certaines incompréhensions au niveau du texte source parce que nous n'étions pas assez imprégnés dans la culture du texte source. Aussi avec le titre, le choix de vivre que nous avons choisi à la fin.
Comment as-tu choisi le titre en effet?
On n'avait pas trouvé un thème en français qui devait rendre Life Savers tel que c'était écrit en anglais. Bien, ça n'accrochait pas selon nous. Et on s'est dit, pourquoi pas s'accrocher sur l'histoire et voir la leçon qui découle de l'histoire. C'est comme ça qu'on a finalement choisi le choix de vivre. Parce que pour moi, quelqu'un qui finalement refuse de se suicider, qui lutte contre cette tendance de suicide, elle a choisi de vivre. Celle qui l'aide et tout ça. Donc, c'est un peu ça, dans ce sens global, que nous avons choisi le titre. Mais ce n'était pas facile, c'est à la fin que nous avons finalement pris ce titre-là.
I always think that the title is the hardest. Whenever I do a translation, it is. And let's go back to Monique now. This is an extra question for you, but what did you think of the translation, of the title, first of all?
Well, honest truth is my French is horrible. So I can't actually comment on, I just thought what I've realized is in some things, the French translation will seem more flowery. And then in other things, the French translation seems more technical. So I think in this case, the French translation did seem more technical than flowery. Because lifesavers is pretty much just one word, and it doesn't really link to, it's more general. Because lifesavers in English could mean everything from a candy to actual lifesavers at the beach. But I think it was fine. I was looking at it like, okay, as long as the same meaning is appreciated in French. And the French readers of the story, because some of my relatives, I am Bami Anglophone, so for this first time I actually say one of my French relatives could read my story.
Okay.
That was actually something that was great for me. Because it was the first time I could actually say my book was being sold in Cameroon. The rest of my work, they can't access it. And it was also the first time that I could actually give it to them to read in the language of their choice.
And that's what I find exciting about translation, is that it gives it a new life. You know, and as we've described with the title changing from Le Choix de Vivre to, or from Lifesavers to Le Choix de Vivre, it still encapsulates the same idea. And I think it's very much about how it feels, or the impression that it gives in those two different languages, than it is about the individual words. But I think that's exciting that it's meant your relatives can read your book, read your work. How did you feel generally about having your work translated?
I love the idea of having the work translated. Actually, that's one of the things that appealed most to me when Mac told me to send in a story. Because it's something that we've discussed before. It's much needed to kind of bridge the Anglophone Francophone divide in the country. I had always said I wish we had the same educational text in both educational systems. And it's possible if we do something like this. If we had an anthology that you could just flip the other side if you wanted to read in French and flip the other side if you wanted to read in English. But all Cameroonian students would have been reading the same stories, the same history textbooks, the same science textbooks in such a way that we're more equitable in the knowledge that we're going forward with. We're getting the same things, we're understanding the same context, and we're understanding or coming from the same background in such a way that we can understand each other better, which is very much needed with this crisis.
Were you pleased with your final translation? So you explained that you don't feel comfortable perhaps or judging the French yourself, but if your family read it, what did they think?
Yes, they loved the story, so I consider that it was a win as long as they enjoyed the story. I don't know. I can't say I can judge like how the translation went, but the gist of it went through, obviously, because they got it.
I know you both took part in different workshops with Bakwa and Josépha with the Bakwa and University of Bristol workshop. So I was wondering, and you can answer in French or English, what you gained from the process, both the process of the workshop, but then Josépha, you had the mentorship with writer-translator Edwige Draw afterwards. So perhaps you could both tell me a little bit about what you gained from those experiences. Josépha, tu veux commencer?
Déjà, l'atelier de formation était vraiment riche. Surtout que c'était la première fois d'être en contact avec la traduction littéraire. Donc, traduire cette nouvelle, c'était juste la concrétisation. Il fallait qu'on montre ce qu'on a appris. Il fallait qu'on montre qu'on peut essayer. Et vraiment, j'ai beaucoup appris que ce n'est pas seulement le fait de se mettre à traduire. Le mentor était là, toujours à nous rappeler. Il faut vous mettre dans la peau de la personne qui raconte. C'était un rappel constant. Déjà, son rôle était très important parce qu'elle nous a remis sur les rails. Nous avions parfois tendance à vouloir sortir, exprimer les choses avec nos mots. Mais elle nous rappelait, il faut rester constant. Essayer de voir quel ton l'auteur a utilisé. Vous alignez. Ce n'est pas la liberté totale. Donc, ça, c'est la première chose que j'ai appris. Ce n'est pas la liberté traduite, ce n'est pas la liberté comme on le croit. Ensuite, la collaboration avec la maison d'édition. Ça aussi, c'est un point important parce que après, quand nous avons fini, Bakwa a effectué les modifications aussi qu'ils nous ont envoyées. Ils nous ont demandé ce que nous pensions des modifications, si on était d'accord ou pas. Parfois, nous n'étions même pas d'accord, mais ils ont pensé qu'il fallait mettre ça comme ça. Donc, il y a ça aussi, c'est l'éditeur qui est aussi au devant de la scène, l'éditeur qui décide. C'était vraiment enrichissant d'apprendre ça.
So I think what's interesting is the fact that you gained from the workshop and you gained from the mentorship and you gained from the whole publishing process as well. And that's quite an experience to have. How about you, Monique? How did you find the Bakwa writing workshop?
Okay, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for two main reasons. Bringing together new writers that I hadn't seen before, and people still starting out their writing journey. So it was the technical questions that make you think really like, what do you want to say, how you want to say it, and making this to the possibilities of making writing to be a career. That discussion was good. And I also remember I enjoyed the writing exercises, especially for poetry. So being given a word and told to develop it based on how you feel at the time actually I remember that workshop inspired a poem of mine that really stayed with me. And it also reminded me of the fact that we tend to look at writing as something that when you get the muse, you do it. It also reminded me that when put under pressure or the confines of a strict time, but told to focus on a thing, you can write even if you might not feel. Perhaps it's best when you feel inspired or moved to, but it's still possible to write in different circumstances. So yeah,
And I think that also happened with the literary translators. By having a workshop, they carved out some time so that they could actually work on literary translation, because most literary translators have full-time jobs and family, and carving out that special, because translation is writing as well as writing is writing. So you know, both roles equally require that time and that space to dedicate to it, I think. So it's been wonderful talking to you both. So maybe you could just tell me what you have coming up in the future as a writer and a translator. Peut-être, Josépha, tu peux dire maintenant ce que tu vas faire à l'avenir en tant que traductrice littéraire.
Et je me suis beaucoup plus intéressée à l'édition ces derniers temps. Et je pensais proposer les traductions aux auteurs. Là, je choisis une œuvre que j'ai lue et qui m'a vraiment touchée. J'essaye de traduire et je propose au traducteur, s'il est intéressé, on peut publier. Oui, oui. Mais pour le moment, je n'ai pas encore commencé, pas du tout commencé. Mais c'est ce que je pense faire plus tard. Et aussi, m'engager un peu plus dans la littérature camerounaise parce qu'elle est encore moins visible, très peu visible au niveau national. Non seulement cet atelier de traduction que nous avons fait l'année dernière. Quand je suis rentrée dans mon école à Boya, les enseignants qui disaient « Waouh, c'est une première, nous ne savions pas qu'il existait quelque chose comme ça. Si vous pouvez revenir », ils étaient vraiment surpris, vraiment contents que nous ayons participé à cet atelier. Et leur souhait était vraiment qu'on puisse encore renouveler l'expérience, peut-être avec plus d'apprenants. Oui, et je me vois comme celle-là qui pourra aussi apporter de son expérience, apporter de ce que je sais à ceux qui veulent connaître, parce que j'ai beaucoup de camarades qui ont dit ils aimeraient apprendre, ils aimeraient faire partie vraiment de ce cercle de traducteurs littéraires au Cameroun. Donc, je pense que je vais m'engager dans ce sens-là, dans l'avenir.
This is just the starting point now, and you can begin to build upon it, I guess. Monique, how about you? What are your plans as a writer going forward?
Right now, I'm still trying to ease. I'm kind of struggling with the writing part. I write. I wish I could say I'm prepared. I'm working on something, but what I'm working on is pretty much academic. If I'm picking up the postdoc, most of my writing that I'll be working on would be the academic writing. I still blog once a month via my blog. I'm trying to keep that habit for creative writing. I'll still probably churn out creative nonfiction pieces once in a while, either to be published in an anthology or an online webzine, but I'm not really producing fiction anymore. I think when I began writing, okay, this story, for instance, is a really old story, but from 2016, 2017, my writing voice really changed, and I stopped writing fiction, more creative nonfiction. Writing about the Anglophone crisis changed the idea, kind of helped me find my writing voice. So I kind of changed what I felt I needed to write about and how driven I was about writing. So I can't really say I'm working on any literary projects, more or less you could count the creative nonfiction pieces I occasionally publish.
Well, I think they are included because they're all creative writing at the end of the day. So it's good to hear that you're both passionate about about what you do and that you do have plans going forward. I'm going to finish up now, but thank you so much for talking to me.